Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we're going to be getting into my August wrap up, and I cannot believe I'm already wrapping up my August. 2024 has just flown by, but I'm so excited to tell you guys about my August reading because I read so many amazing books, 20 to be exact. But before we get into the books, I'd love to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, which is 5 Surveys. Using 5 Surveys, you can get some extra cash just by sharing your thoughts and opinions. If you complete 5 surveys, you get $5. It's literally that simple. And think of how nice it would be to have some extra money to spend on your next book haul just simply by filling out some surveys. Plus, you get to make your voice heard while you're doing that. I've used the platform myself and I think it's super simple, really straightforward. There are always a ton of surveys available, and all of these surveys are across a ton of different topics. And if you ever need help with anything, they also have customer support 24/7 as well. All you have to do is sign up, complete some surveys, and get rewarded. You can also cash out your rewards at any time. There's no specific threshold that you have to meet, no minimum payout at all. You can get paid straight to PayPal, or you can choose a gift card to one of, I think, over 200 retailers. So go ahead and turn your spare time into spare change. Go down below and check out my link to get started on 5 surveys. And thank you so much to 5 Surveys for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into the books. As for my August reading, as I mentioned earlier, I did read 20 books total. That was a total of 5,984 pages, which is a lot of damn pages. And here's my mood breakdown, which is pretty standard for me. Mysterious, dark, tense. As for pacing, I did read 1 slow-paced book, 5 fast-paced books, and the majority were medium-paced. That's kind of different for me. Usually I read mostly fast-paced, so I'm kind of impressed that I read some medium-paced, even 1 slow-paced book, and I still read as many books as I did. 20 books in a month is really great for me. I had an almost even split. I had 8 books that were under 300 pages and then 12 that were between 300 and 500. I read 1 nonfiction book that I want to tell you about, and then the rest were fiction. Here is my genre breakdown. Again, this just makes sense. And across my 20 reviews, I had an average rating of 3.76 stars out of 5, which is a little lower, but I did read more books, and usually the more books I read, the lower that average is, because the more books I throw in, the more duds there are gonna be. I don't tend to give out as many 5 stars as I used to. As you can see, I had 1 book that I did not rate, that is nonfiction. I try not to rate nonfiction, especially if it deals with someone's personal trauma and factual information. I just don't feel like I want to judge someone's own journey and the way that they interpret that. That is for themselves. So I left that book unrated. But as for the books that I did rate, I had 2 2 stars and a 2.5 star, 3 3 stars and 3 3.5 stars, 4 4 stars, 1 4.5 star, and 5 5-star books. Finally, the past couple months I've had no 5 stars, but I discovered quite a few favorites in the month of August. And here's my breakdown as to how I read those pages over the course of the month. As you can see, for my 24-hour readathon, I read well over 1,000 pages, which was so successful. I also had a weekend where I read absolutely nothing because we were just super busy, but the rest of the time was pretty evenly spread out. Now let's get into the reviews of my 20 books that I read in August. I want to start out with my unrated nonfiction book that I read in August, which was Girlhood by Melissa Febos, and oh my gosh, I loved this book. I actually read this a lot longer than just in the month of August. I believe I started it in June, and so I've just been slowly taking it in piece by piece, a little bit at a time, which I do prefer to read nonfiction that way rather than binging it, so I actually feel like I get the value out of it and I internalize the meaning of it. And this was really great. It's about the author's personal experience, and the way that she presents it is like different occurrences that she had over her lifetime. And at the beginning of each essay, she will talk about that experience, then talk about common ways that she and many women could misinterpret that occurrence or that experience. Then she goes into the research, both scientific and spiritual and mental health research, on why we might think those things and what the actual takeaways maybe should be or could be if it feels better for you. And then she does some kind of like reprocessing at the end of how she sees the event or herself a little bit differently, covering a lot of topics from girlhood, as you can imagine, like early experiences we have as women around our bodies, around sexuality, around sexual assault, and things like that. So it is kind of sensitive material, but I thought the way that she went through it was really gentle and really approachable. So I really appreciated that. I think if you're interested in kind of like reprocessing or just like acknowledging the weight of some of your early experiences, this could be really, really valuable for you to read. I highlighted it, I made notes, I did a lot of annotating, and I absolutely loved it. Next up, we will get into the books that I did rate, starting out with my least favorite book of the month and working our way up to my very favorite book of the month, of which there are quite a few. So it's gonna be a tiebreaker as I'm ranking all of those. My worst book of the month by far was Pond by Claire Louise Bennett, which I gave 2 stars. Honestly, this book had me in the first half, okay? The first half, if this would have been a novella, I would have really, really liked it and probably given it like 4 stars, but because it just dragged on and on and on, I got so incredibly bored and felt so incredibly disconnected from this story. In this book, we're basically following a woman as she just does things, and we know nothing about her, okay? This is not a character-driven story, which I thought that it was going to be because it kind of talks about the character on the back of the book, but we don't know her name, we don't know her life, we don't know her experiences, we know nothing about her. There's also no plot, okay? So it's characterless and plot list. The thing that's driving this book is the little tasks that she's doing, and I guess like our characters' interactions or impact on the world around her or the environment. It's very environment driven. So she'll talk about like the meaning that she gets from having a certain food at a certain time of day. And it's very vibey, it's very atmospheric in that way. You can definitely viscerally feel everything that she's talking about, but for me, I just didn't really get much beyond that. I think I see exactly what the book was trying to do, but the execution is where it kind of gets a little fuzzy for me, because my meaning making stopped at the point where I didn't know how to relate to my character. I just knew that I could relate to the environment that she was in. I hope that makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of what I got from this one. My other 2-star read was unfortunately a Lucinda Berry book, and y'all know I usually really love her thrillers. I have not read anything that I've like actively disliked from her, I don't think, other than the books I'm about to tell you about, because I've been trying to read all of her books so I can give you a rating and ranking video on her entire backlist. I have done that for quite a few other thriller authors in the past, and I really love making those videos, so I want to do that for Lucinda Berry, but unfortunately, on doing that, I am discovering her flops. One such flop is Off the Deep End, which I gave 2 stars, as I mentioned. This is about a woman who is feeling a lot of guilt around a traumatic situation where she got in a car accident and her car was actually sinking in the water, and she was driving her son and her son's friend, and she very actively was trying to save her son and not her son's friend in this traumatic situation. But obviously, because it was traumatic, everything was moving fast, she realized when she finally got out of the water and recovered that she had saved the friend and not her son. So there is a lot of trauma that's unfolding for her, for this boy that she did save, but she like low-key regrets saving. And then there's some stuff going on in the aftermath of the accident as well that kind of adds layers to our characters and to the story. And the reason why I didn't like this book is because it could not pick a lane. Okay, I thought that we were going down this like survivor's guilt trajectory. Lucinda Berry tried to add some like twists in there, but really they were just like turns that the plot took that didn't really make a lot of sense. I think Lucinda Berry does psychological thrillers with really intense trauma and darkness really well when she like goes in on one thing. But I think she was just trying to do way too much here and everything turned out half-baked because we were processing survivor's guilt, but we were also processing a lot of other things that I think were handled just a little bit inappropriately, like the weird relationship between an adult and a child in the midst of trauma. Like it was not good. And also gun violence, specifically like at a school, which I already feel like should be handled in a very specific way because I have a lot of teachers in my life. My husband is a teacher, and that just frankly absolutely scares the shit out of me that that is even a thing that the world has to worry about in the country that I live in. So anyway, I don't like how that was handled. I don't think it needed to be in there. It didn't add to the plot. Everything was really half-baked and confused, and I could tell that it was written with this air of like, haha, look at this twist. And I was like, oh, this doesn't feel like a twist. This feels like it's really lacking depth. So 2 stars. I'll leave it at that. The next book I want to talk about, my 2.5 star rated book, was also a Lucinda Berry thriller. This is her new release, If You Tell a Lie. And originally, when I first read the synopsis of this book, I was so excited. Okay, it's dual timeline. One timeline is like all these ladies getting threatening letters in present day, and the letters say like, I know what you did that summer. So it's automatically giving like classic horror movie vibes. We're also following a timeline in the past, early 2000s moments, with all of those same characters, the younger versions of themselves at summer camp, and oh my god, they get involved with a man who ends up dead. So we're thinking, oh my god, this catty group of little adolescent girls committed a murder and now someone knows about it and they're getting blackmailed. Like, I love that setup for a thriller. Y'all know I've been loving these summer camp vibes this summer in thriller and horror books. So I just thought Lucinda Berry read my mind and I thought she was gonna eat. Unfortunately, she did not. There were many crumbs left on the plate. I was mixing up a lot of the characters throughout the course of the book. I don't think they were clearly defined. I don't think this book was very shocking at all. I kind of like knew where it was going the whole time through. And I think that's where Lucinda Berry usually does shine, is her twists, even if they're not as tasteful as I want them to be. They are shocking. This was not that. And overall, it was just a little bit tedious to get through. So although I was like enjoying the unfolding drama, and I think it was a well-written book, I had some issues with the pacing, the character development. Next up, let's hop into my 3-star rated books, starting out with Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I read this in my Abby Jimenez taste test vlog. If you missed that one, I will link it up above and down below. I had such a good time dipping my toes into this very hyped romance author's backlist. Part of Your World was the first in the series of 3 companion novels that I read in that video. It's about a girl whose car breaks down in a small town, and she's like this very like hoity-toity city girl, but this guy helps her get her car back running, and he's like this little country boy. They have such different worlds, and yet they fall in love and find this common ground. I thought it was really adorable, although I did have some issues with our main female character that I talked about at length in that vlog. I come in to romance with a really nuanced point of view. Also, I do take it seriously when people say that they're representing some mental health in a romance book. People can say like, oh, it's fluffy, it's a rom-com, da-da-da. I don't care. We're all human, and that means we all have nervous systems, and our nervous systems love to internalize ideas about ourselves that live in our body. That's how trauma works. So if someone is saying that they're doing that in a book, no matter how light and fun it's supposed to be, I'm going to have a nuanced view of like the ideas that could be internalized based on what the book is saying. So I go over all of that in my Abby Jimenez video, and I think according to the comments, some people thought that that meant that I didn't like the book, and that is not true. As you can see, I gave this book 3 stars, and everything else that I read in that video is ranked even higher than this one that I'm talking about now. It's not that I had any really negative opinion of this book. I think it was an above average rom-com, but I have a nuanced view of mental health and of characters. I think that's the fun part about reading books, specifically romance, is to see how people are different in relationships. And I think Abby Jimenez did a good job of that at some points, but I do think it was a little bit muddied, especially with our main female character. She said some things I didn't agree with and was quite unlikable for me at times. So that is like a brief overview of my thoughts. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to get into specifics. If you want to see that, you can watch the vlog. I had a very similar opinion of another 3-star rated book that I read in that same video, which was Just for This Summer. This one, the setup is so much fun. The two people, the couple that we're gonna follow, they end up meeting on Reddit because they both have this similar problem where every single person that they date, after they break up, that person goes on to find their soulmate, get married immediately after. And they're like, what is it with me? Like, I am just the good luck charm. If you date me immediately after, you're gonna find your soulmate. So they posit that by dating each other immediately after they break up, they will find their own individual soulmates. However, because it's a romance, we know that they're going to find that in each other. Similar to Part of Your World, I had some issues with how some mental health things were represented, and I was glad to see that some of y'all agreed with me in the comments. Thank you for saying that, because I can feel like when people are like, oh my god, Hailey hates everything, I'm like, no, I actually liked it. I actually really enjoyed the book. I just like have a nuanced thought in my head and I say it out loud because this is what I do on my channel. Thank you for the people who saw and understood that, especially the thoughts about avoidant attachment in this book. Anyway, moving on. The last 3-star book I want to tell you about is Damned by Chuck Palahniuk, which this came out a while ago, but I recently bought this one, and this is a new release because it got a new cover and like a new design. So I had said at one point in some video, like, this is a newer release. It's a re-release. So this edition is new. Just want to make that correction because I saw some people, like some discourse about that in the comments. This book is following a 13-year-old girl named Madison who unfortunately passes away and goes to hell. And we are following her journey through hell with this kind of like quirky menagerie of characters a la The Breakfast Club. It's literally edgy adolescent girl goes through the Breakfast Club in hell. Yeah, it's weird. You can probably tell by the setup, it's weird. It's very Chuck Palahniuk. Like, if you go into this, you have to know and prepare yourself. There are some problematic things. There are some shocking things. There are things that are just said to shock and horrify you, which I don't love. I'm gonna be totally honest. That's why this is a 3-star and not a 4 or 5. Because of that, I think it cheapens the overall message of this book, which is really, really great. And I did highlight and annotate quite a few passages in here. This quote is kind of like the main idea of the book, and I think it's really, really, really beautiful. It says, "It's not fair. What makes Earth feel like hell is our expectation that it should feel like heaven. Earth is earth and dead is dead." And I kind of love that like reality check, and that idea is really built on throughout the course of the book. While I love that, I didn't love the like exceedingly gross parts, especially about bodily functions. I hate that. And I also didn't like the like shock, edgy boy in the back of the class kind of vibes. So that is my thought on Damned. Next up, getting into 3.5 star books, we have yet another Lucinda Berry. This one was better though. I read One Little Mistake, which is an audio only, so you actually are not going to be able to find a physical copy of this, but I did listen to the audio. This is about a woman trying to get out of a really bad marriage situation, and because it's so short, I believe the audio is only like 4 hours long. I don't want to give away anything more than that. It is domestic suspense, drama, twisty, but overall not something I'm gonna like really think about ever again. It was fun in the moment. I definitely had more fun reading this than any of the other books that I've talked about thus far, just because it really matched up with my like rich people drama twisty thrillers that I enjoy, but it was nothing super revolutionary. It didn't really have the time with the length to flesh out any main ideas, but it was good. I also gave The Dare by Natasha Preston 3.5 out of 5 stars, which is pretty legendary, pretty good. I usually give Natasha Preston books like 1 star because I really hate them. Why do I keep picking them up? I don't know. That's my toxic trait, my mental illness. You can talk shit about me about it. I don't care. I will continue to pick up these books. Fortunately, this release I really actually enjoyed. This follows a group of teenagers who are graduating, and their big like senior prank is this whole like massive production of dares, where this one group of boys will dole out dares to everyone in the senior class and they have to complete them, and that's like the senior prank. And some of them are innocent, like, oh my god, release a bunch of chickens in the school and like the teachers will go crazy and like chase them. And then some are like actually really dangerous and horrifying. So we are following this one little friend group where they do a dare and it goes incredibly wrong, and then they are trying to make up for it and cover their tracks, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It builds so much tension, so much suspense. It didn't end off on a cliffhanger, which I really, really love. I actually feel like this is a 4-star book. The reason why I knocked off the half star is because honestly, I don't know what it was. The first third of this book read so stilted. It almost read like AI. Like, I don't think that AI wrote this book, but that is the best comparison that I can draw, is like it was just very like stilted. The pacing was weird. It felt like an adult was trying to be a kid, but you know that it's an adult, you know? But once the tension kicked in and the action kicked in and the thriller plot, it was really great. So if you're gonna read a Natasha Preston book, this is one that I actually would recommend. And my last 3.5 star book that I have to talk to you about is One Big Happy Family by Jamie Day, which I read in my new release thriller vlog. This is all about a B&B, this very fancy hotel for rich people. It's like this old, gorgeous estate, and we are following the family as they've all come there to look into the will because the guy who owns it, the patriarch of this family, recently passed away. They are all trapped there in this big, huge, massive, gorgeous B&B to look into the well, and there's also a storm. Not just any storm, a hurricane, okay? So they have to batten down the hatches and try to survive while they're getting into the family drama of the will, and then people start turning up dead, Knives Out style. I love this kind of setup for a rich people family drama murder mystery, and it gave me pretty much exactly what I was looking for. The reason why I took off a half star was because I think the setup and the pacing of the book was a little bit odd. The way that it was broken into sections, I didn't love. I think it would have been better if we just would have gotten it told all the way straight through with different perspectives. But yeah, the way that the book was set up was a little bit odd. Other than that, I think if you like that kind of a setup for a book, I think you'll enjoy this one. All right, so now we are going to get into my 4-star books. So everything from this point on has the Hailey stamp of approval. I highly recommend all of these. I really, really enjoyed them. These were not just like meh, good time. These were like, yes, yes, yes. So my first 4-star book was fortunately, my pretty girl book club pick for August, which was The Haters by Robin Harding. I had a reading vlog for this one that went up on Patreon only, and we're actually going to discuss this one, I think on the day that this video is going live. So if you want to talk about this book with me later tonight on a live show and then have some reading sprints, you can sign up for my Patreon. It's always linked down below. It's the Pretty Girl Book Club. You can join, you can hang out with us, you can read, you can watch the exclusive videos, yada, yada, yada. We have so much fun over there. And I had a very interesting time reading this book because the premise is unfortunately something that I've experienced before. We are following an author in this book who publishes a book, gets a review, it's 1 star, it lives in this author's mind, and she goes absolutely batshit trying to figure out who made this review and why they hate them so much, and they just go absolutely chaos crazy. So immediately, the main character of this book is extremely unlikable. We're literally seeing her brain melts. Like, she's like, the hinges are off the door. The marbles that make her up are rolling on the floor. Like, everything is lost, everything is gone, and she is imploding. She makes every single horrible decision she could possibly make at every turn. So that is how it feels to read this book. It's very suspenseful. It's very crazy in an almost laughable way. Like, we are not aligned with this character at all, or at least I wasn't, because I was like, you're psycho. Like, the whole time I was like, drop it. But what kept me reading was I was genuinely really interested in who wrote this review and maybe what kind of agenda they had, because this was not just a random person on the internet, which obviously there would be no entertainment value in watching a crazy person attack a random person on the internet. In this book, the reviewer has a certain agenda that they're going for. They know the author personally. There's like some stuff with that, and that is the crux of the thriller plot. I thought the mystery was interesting. I thought it was an interesting ride, although I will say there were a lot of opportunities for Robin Harding to infuse some kind of commentary here, and she just put her hands up and backed away. And you know what? If this is just a fun little thriller time, I respect it. No need to speak on it, queen. I can speak for myself, I guess. My next 4-star was completely unexpected. I read this one for my 24-hour readathon vlog yet again. Did I say I was gonna link that one up above and down below? If I didn't say that, I'll do that for you in case you're interested, because I went really in depth and I was a little bit in my like chaotic ranting space in my sleep deprived state, so that's a fun video. This was one that I read during that readathon. It's called I Can See Your Lies by Izzy Lee. It's a little horror novella. I haven't heard anyone talk about it, but I really enjoyed this one. If you like the movie Maxine, you're gonna love this one. It's about this girl, and her mother was like this Hollywood glamour kind of actress, and she is kind of following in her mother's footsteps, but she's also trying to put the pieces together of her mother's death because she does not know what happened to her. So we're going through all these like old Hollywood vibey kind of like archives, and we're also dealing with this intergenerational trauma plotline because our main character has something a little bit speculative going on with her, where when someone is lying to her, she sees black bubbles popping all over their face. So she knows when she's being lied to. And recently her daughter has come to her and told her, "Mommy, when people lie, I see black sludge running down their face." So we know that this is something passed down and possibly something her mother was dealing with as well. We are following our main character as she just tries to put these pieces together. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so fun. The premise was so unique. It was written really well. It had like really great flow to it. The characters were endearing, the setting, the Hollywood glamour, like it was so great. Obviously it was a short little novella, so there wasn't too much time to expand on anything really deeply meaningful, but for the horror novella that it was, I think it's so great, and I can't believe more people aren't reading this one. If you can find a copy, really highly recommend it. Next up, we have another book that I read over on Patreon, and that is Dead Leaves by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is a short story collection. There are 9 horror stories in here, all about fall. I read this one to prepare myself and get ready, hyped up for the fall season, and I ended up really enjoying a lot of the short stories in here. They're all themed around like fall feelings, Halloween. There's a lot of like witch and grave and like pumpkin content in here. So it was the perfect thing to hype me up for fall. And this would be a great pick for Happy Hailey-ween, since we always have a prompt about reading something that takes place on Halloween. There are a lot of stories in here that do. So this would fit for that. I gave it 4 stars, really enjoyed it, love a little horror story. And my last 4-star book I have to tell you about is The Block Party, also by Jamie Day, who wrote the One Big Happy Family book from earlier. And this one is another like rich people drama murder mystery, but this time it happens at a little block party. So a year ago, there was this block party and a bunch of shit went down. And then in the current day, there's gonna be another block party. And again, shit is gonna go down. There are bodies, there are rich people drama, there's intergenerational trauma, there's a lot of different things about relationships between adolescents and their parents. And while I thought the drama was like just as entertaining as the last book, and the murder mystery plot was just as fun and interesting as the last thriller that I talk about by Jamie Day, this one got a higher rating because there was some meaningful conversation in here, especially about like raising teens. So I thought that was really cool, and I highly recommend this one, especially if you have teenage kids or you work with teens. This is just a very interesting look at that kind of dynamic, along with some fun, some thrillerness. Moving on up, we have the one book that I read this month and gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. I know some people get annoyed with that rating, but let me just tell you, I need to delineate between 4-star like good books and my favorites of all time. Okay, if I give something a 5-star, that's a favorite of all time. There are some books that are like better than just good, but not a favorite of all time. You know what I mean? So that is what a 4.5 star rating means to me. And the one that I read this month that qualifies for that position is How to Be Eaten by Maria Adelman. And I freaking loved this up until the end, and I'm so mad. I have such mixed feelings about this because the first like 90% of this book, iconic, that could qualify as a favorite of all time. I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it. But then the end, so that's literally the only qualm I have. And obviously I'm not going to get into spoilers, but the premise of this book is so interesting. It's about this group of girls, and they're all in group therapy together, and they kind of don't really understand each other. They have judgments about each other. They victim blame, yada yada da. It's how group therapy goes. If you're a therapist and you've ever run a group, you know it can be chaos sometimes, and it definitely is in this book. But over the course of the book, they all come to a understanding, and it's about like getting to know the characters and seeing how they're all similar, how they're all different. There's like a core mystery that goes into it as well, which is part of the reason I didn't like it at the ending, but there's that. The interesting thing here is that all of these individual women are like fairy tale retellings. So we have like Gretel from Hansel and Gretel, we have Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, different characters from like iconic stories that are telling the audience, us and each other, how the experience that they lived was actually deeply traumatic for them. And I thought reimagining these classic, almost like childlike tales in this way was so interesting, just to think of like the ideas that were selling little girls. I don't know. It was very cool. It was written in a really interesting way. I loved the character development. The only thing that robbed me at the end was that freaking ending. I didn't like it. It just didn't sit right, but everything else loved. So if you read this, hopefully you'll like it more than I did at the end. I could see a world where someone would really enjoy it, but it just didn't hit for me. And now we are into all of my 5-star reads. Oh my God, let's just jump in. Starting out with Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. See, I told you I like Abby Jimenez. This book was incredible. Okay, this is so much more than just a rom-com. This made me want to be a better person. That was like the #1 takeaway from this book for me. It's about two people literally just trying their best to meet each other where they are. And I think it's a beautiful, emotional romance. These two people obviously just have such high regard for each other. It starts off on a miscommunication. So our main female character thinks that this dude from outside of her hospital, she works in a hospital, is just gonna like swoop in and take the promotion that she was up for. And she's like, misogynist pig, I fucking hate this hospital, I fucking hate this man, like I am angry. And then she realizes what's actually going on and they come to this mutual understanding. So you think it's going to be enemies to lovers, but then they get off on the wrong foot and they repair. And that's the theme that is carried throughout the entire romance, is they might have like these little stumbles, but there's just this beautiful repair. And it literally, like, you're never ever going to hear me say anything that sounds like I'm getting on my knees for anyone ever. But this is the thing that I'm going to say very genuinely and vulnerably that sounds the closest to that. This made me want to be a good wife to my husband. Huh? I mean, obviously I want to do that, but like to say that out loud, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a threat to my independence. As women out there, you probably hear it and you understand that, but this just like emphasizes that no matter where you are and what you assume of your partner's intentions, if at the end of the day we focus on repair, it will literally make me cry talking about this. It can be beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna get emotional. Like, I'm moving on. It was beautiful. Okay, this is a beautiful romance. Abby Jimenez is a great writer. Let me digress. And then of course, because I'm me, all my other 5 stars, no, not all my other 5 stars are thrillers. Ooh, there's one that's a surprise at the end that is literally, I think, my favorite book of the year, but we'll get there. Let's talk about some 5-star iconic, amazing thrillers. The Vacancy in Room 10 by Serafina Nova Glass. We are following 2 perspectives, 2 women who were involved with the disappearance of a man, and I'm gonna leave it pretty vague because I think you should go in kind of blind and let it take you on a ride. We're figuring out what happened to this man through the perspectives of these 2 women who are investigating around the place where he originally disappeared, which was this motel, like seedy, weird, gross motel, turned into an apartment complex that now this like quirky menagerie of characters live at. So we're following the quirky menagerie, we're also following these 2 women. We get into a gritty, dark, gross thriller plot that completely took me by surprise. I loved it. If you love just a twisty plot and a dark thriller with interesting characters, this is it. No notes. Another thriller that I gave 5 stars in the same vlog as that one was Do What Godmother Says by L.S. Stratton. In this book, we are following the mystery behind a painting. Our main character gets this painting from her grandmother, and she's told like this has been in our family for forever and ever and ever. And she's really interested in who the artist is, and as she finds out more and more and more, she discovers that there is some sinister stuff going on behind this painting. We're also following a historical plot line about the artist at the time in the 20s during the Harlem Renaissance in New York City. And the woman who made the painting was this young Black girl, like coming up in her talent in New York. She's like slaying the game, but then she is preyed on by this wealthy white woman who is this like art patron. And when she says she's gonna sponsor this little artist, the artist doesn't really understand that it means that she owns her and all of her work forever. And then a murder happens and many things happen from there, and the 2 plot lines really converge and reflect each other in meaningful but also really exciting, really suspenseful ways. I absolutely loved the structure of this book, the characters, the atmosphere of it. This has a real like gothic feel. If you like a gritty New York thriller, you're gonna love this one. I just absolutely love Ella Stratton. This is the 2nd book I've read from her and the 2nd book that I've given 5 stars. So her track record is just on fire for me, and I cannot wait to see what she does next. Next up, we have We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. Oh my God, this trippy horror book had me in a chokehold. hold. The feeling of reading this book is the feeling that I got watching Skinamarink minus the boredom, okay? If you liked Skinamarink, the horror movie, in theory, you're gonna like this because the execution came through with this one. This is like every weird fear and every weird Reddit rabbit hole I've ever gone down in a book. You know when it's like 2 a.m. and you realize you've been watching McCamey Manor videos all night? And you get like kind of creeped out and then you get scared to like go wash your face and take off your makeup. That is how this book made me feel. That's the best way I can describe it. It's about this gay couple. They're so cute. They're so iconic. And one of them, the one that's home at the time that this creepy occurrence happens, is like, she's a real people pleaser. And she's just like wishing that her partner was here to handle the situation, because this family comes to the door and they're like, hey, like we used to live here. Like, can we come through and show our kids like where their father grew up and blah blah. And she's like, okay, yeah, like sure, make it quick. But then they won't leave. And this is so much more than a haunted house or a creepy family. Oh my God, the conspiracies go off. There are hidden messages in this book. It's so creepy. It is so worth the read. I can't even tell you. This book gave me a feeling. That's what art is supposed to do. This is a literature. This is trippy gay horror at its finest. And that is really at my core what I love. So this is one of my best books of the year. Honestly, hands down, it's so good. And the last book, my favorite book that I read, not just in August, but I think of the entire year, is Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh my God. Oh my God. So to preface, I read this one during the Olympics. It was perfect. Okay, it was perfect. The trials and tribulations of being an athlete are talked about in here, specifically a female athlete of color whose family had to immigrate here and work their fucking asses off. I could literally talk about this book forever and ever and ever. Amen. I am obsessed with the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid crafts really nuanced, kind of sometimes unlikable female characters. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. It was amazing. It is the story of a woman who is the best tennis player in the world in the like 70s and early 80s. And then in the 90s, this girl comes up and is better than her, like is besting her at every career defining moment. So she's like, you know what? I'm coming out of retirement and I'm gonna fucking dominate again and I'm gonna get my titles back. And we follow her on that journey. It is emotional, it is character driven, it is everything. I literally have no notes on this book. Like every piece of it was phenomenal. And I've seen, because I was hesitant to read this book when it first came out because I heard that there was some problematic Latina representation in here. I think I saw a couple reviews saying that, but since then I've seen like a ton of Own Voices reviews that really liked it. I gave it a chance and I'm so glad I did, because wow, I thought it was phenomenal. But also remember, I'm a white woman saying this, so if you disagree, I mean, this is not to invalidate you at all. I just really enjoyed the story, and I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is so talented, and yeah, I loved it. So that is gonna do it for me for my August wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed all the reviews of these 20 books and you're gonna pick a few of them up or add them to your TBR. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And of course, go down below and check out 5 surveys. Make your quick little extra spending money just by giving your opinions. And of course, don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!